The morning Corven Casparian left Cyrosol, he stood at the departure platform with his hand out, and Lana Evergrow looked at it and turned away. She moved through the crowd of young ones gathering at the griffin mounts, and she climbed onto a griffin beside Tavon. Crowned Tavon with his emerald antlers and his easy laugh and his bark already thickening at the throat, and she settled behind him without looking back. Corven held his hand in the air a moment longer than he should have. Long enough for others to see. Long enough for the heat to reach his face. Then he closed his fist and let it fall and walked to his mount, a grey-feathered bull griffin his family's name had paid for, saddled for one, and he climbed up alone because the Casparian name could buy a private mount, but could not buy someone willing to share it. The griffins launched from the canopy edge in a staggered line, and the wind hit him, and Cyrosol fell away below, its vast platforms and hanging bridges, and the green glow of the canopy stretching in every direction under a sky so wide it had no edges. He had lived his whole life up here. The warmth, the perfect rhythm of the light, the hum of the network so constant it was like living inside a heartbeat that never faltered. He could feel it now beneath everything. The green signal of 10,000 Verdanii going about their lives in the city below, and somewhere in that signal he could feel Lana. Faint. Thin. The green song between them barely a thread where it had once been something that filled him so completely he could not tell where his signal ended and hers began. She had not taken his hand. The fury came slow and then all at once. Not the sharp kind. The kind that sits low in the chest and burns without flame. The kind that makes the jaw tight and the bark itch at the collarbone where it never holds. He watched her griffin 200 meters ahead, her dark green hair whipping in the slipstream, Tavon's antlers catching the light. The fury deepened into something older and heavier because he realized he was not surprised. He was not shocked. He was angry because she had confirmed what he had been refusing to see for so long, that the refusal itself had become a kind of faith. 2 years. He could feel it now, the shape of 2 years of withdrawal, and the clarity came like a curtain pulled from a window. Lana standing further from him at gatherings. Lana's laughter arriving late, polite, measured. Lana reaching for his hand and then not reaching, the gesture dying before it completed, and him pretending he hadn't noticed because noticing meant knowing, and knowing meant losing, and he had so little left to lose. The green song thinning month by month, he had blamed his weak connection, his faulty reception, the network deficit the healers had no name for. But it was not him. It was her. She had been pulling her roots back one by one, quietly, carefully, leaving just enough that he could pretend the ground was still solid beneath them. He saw it all at once on the back of that griffin in the high wind above the canopy, and the seeing was so complete it felt like someone else's eyes behind his own. And then the images came. They hit without warning, darkness, cold. A cold he had never felt because cold does not exist on Verdantia, and something moving in the black, something flickering, and his own hands reaching for a force that had no name, and a sound like the world splitting open beneath him. He shook his head hard enough that the griffin adjusted its wing beat. The images scattered. The wind came back. The sky came back. He was breathing fast, and his bark, the thin patches at his collarbone, itched in a way that felt like something trying to push through from underneath. He pressed his palm against his chest and held it there until his breathing slowed. Nerves. The threshold waiting ahead. The pressure of the name Casparian and everything it demanded and everything he could not deliver. That was all. He told himself that was all, and he held the lie close because the truth of what he had just seen was too far from anything his world could explain. The griffin flew north. The light shifted. The first day stretched long across a canopy that slowly changed beneath him, the dense, multi-layered green of the equatorial forests thinning into something wider, more open, the trees growing differently this far from Verdevant. No temperature change. Verdantia held its warmth everywhere, the living core so powerful that the air stayed constant no matter how far north he traveled. But the light moved. The perfect split he had known his whole life began to tilt. The sun hanging longer, the shadows stretching at angles Cyrosol never produced. They landed at nightfall at a waypoint, a broad platform grown between 4 ancient trunks where the young ones crowded together and ate and talked too loudly about what waited ahead. Corven sat apart. He watched Lana across the platform, leaning into a conversation he could not hear and choosing not to broadcast through the network. speaking aloud, to Tevan, the intimacy of spoken words on a world where the trees carry everything. He ate alone. He slept beneath his griffin's wing. In the dark between waking and sleep, the images tried to come again. Cold, something moving, his hands burning with a light that was not green, and he shut them down before they could form. The second day carried them the rest of the way north, and by the time the griffins descended toward the outpost platforms, he could see the rot line on the horizon. Not the rot itself. The smoke. A wall of nothing stretching across the northern sky, eating the light of Ilarion, and even from this distance, something in his body knew it was wrong. Not dangerous, not threatening. Wrong in a way that had no name, as if the world simply stopped being real past that line, and what replaced it was an absence wearing the shape of presence. The young ones went quiet. Even Tevan's laugh died. They landed. The threshold waited. It was not what he expected. The stories made it sound like a battlefield, a crucible, a place of fire and transformation. It was a strip of forest between the outpost and the rot line where the corruption bled through the barriers in faint waves, not enough to corrupt, just enough to press. The trees here were pale, not dying, washed out, the green in them diluted by proximity to something that consumed color the way the smoke above consumed light. Crystal Angelus moved between the pale trunks, vast, silent, their crystalline horns refracting what sunlight the smoke left, emerald, amethyst, diamond, obsidian. Their cat-like eyes watching everything. The young ones entered one at a time. Corven watched them go. Some came back running within minutes, the fear too much, the pressure of the rot's whisper crushing something in them that could not hold. Some stayed longer. A few stayed long enough that when they walked out, they were not alone, a crystal angelus beside them, and the crown already beginning to grow from their temples, crystal antlers pushing through skin, and bark in a slow emergence that looked like pain and revelation in equal measure. Lana walked in. She stayed. She walked out with an amethyst-horned angelus at her side, and her crown beginning, and the look on her face was something Corven memorized without wanting to, because it was the look she had never once worn for him, certainty. His turn. He walked into the pale forest, and the rot's whisper found him immediately. It pressed against his mind the way deep water presses against the chest, not violent. Just heavy, just relentless, just enough to make breathing feel like a decision rather than an instinct. The green hum of the network, already thin in him, went thinner. The trees here barely spoke. Their signal was diluted, washed, and for most Verdani that fading was the source of the terror, the loss of the constant voice that had accompanied them since birth. For Corven, it was not so different from every day of his life. He stood in the pale light between the washed-out trees and waited. A crystal angelus approached. He felt it before he saw it, not through the network but directly, a warmth, a presence, something pushing against him on a frequency he could not name. The angelus came close. Diamond horns, eyes like clear water. It reached for him in the way they reach, not physically, not through the green channel, but through the crystalline resonance that opens the elemental bond. It found nothing to hold. Corven felt it trying. Felt the connection extend toward him and pass through him the way light passes through glass, present, visible, unable to grip. The angelus shifted. Tried again. He stood perfectly still and willed himself to be open, to be receptive, to be anything other than what he was, and the resonance slid past him a second time, and the angelus pulled back with something in its diamond eyes that looked too much like confusion. Another came. Obsidian horns. It tried. The same result. The same sliding, the same failure to latch, the same withdrawal. He stood in the threshold for 3 hours. 4 angelus approached him. 4 tried. 4 pulled away. He did not run. He did not break. He stood in the rot's whisper with the network barely holding him, and the cold creeping in at the edges of perception, and he waited for something that was never going to come because the door they were knocking on was not the door that opened for him. He walked out unmarked, uncrowned, whole and empty. Lana was waiting, her new crown catching the light, her amethyst angelus standing behind her like a testament. She had words prepared. He could see them sitting behind her expression, organized, justified, a careful speech designed to explain why the root pledge had to end, why she had tried, why this was the kindest thing for both of them. He did not let her start. "I am severing the root pledge." Her mouth opened, closed. The words she had built collapsed behind her eyes, and what replaced them was not relief or guilt, but something worse. The shock of a person who came to deliver a blow and found the wound already made. Corvain. Tell them I severed it. Tell your family. Tell whoever you want. The fault is mine. He watched her search for the argument she had prepared and find no surface to attach it to. He had taken the ground from beneath her speech and left her standing in air, and for one moment, brief, sharp, gone. He felt the green song between them flare with something raw and unfiltered, her signals spiking with an emotion she had not intended to broadcast, and then it cut. Clean. Final. A root pulled from the earth. He turned from her and walked toward the outpost where his father's banner hung from the watchtower. The Casparian standard, the spear, and the deep-rooted tree, and with each step, the distance between himself and everything he had been grew wider and colder and more permanent. Halfway there, the vision hit him so hard his knees buckled. Darkness, true darkness, cold beyond anything Vedantia allowed. And in the black, 4 eyes, bright purple where white should be, burning orange iris, black center, 4 eyes watching him from every direction at once with a patience that had outlasted civilizations. And beneath the watching, far beneath, something vast and formless and hungry pressed against the skin of reality like a hand pressing against the other side of a window. And it knew his name, and it had always known his name, and it was waiting. He gasped, and the vision broke, and he was on his knees on the forest floor with his palms in the dirt and his bark, his thin, useless, patchy bark, glowing faintly white in a pulse that faded before anyone could see it. He stood. He wiped his hands. He walked toward his father's outpost and did not look back.